he achieved the perfect play. He said, it is a remarkable day in my life.
We recorded all these different lectures Prabhupada gave. I usually did the translating, which was an experience in itself. Prabhupada would start with a single sentence, then I would translate. I must say my English at that time was much worse than it is now. Next time he had 2 sentences. Next, 3 sentences. It was getting longer and longer. By some time, he would speak for 2, 3, 4 minutes, and I had to memorize everything to be able to translate it. It was quite an experience. But sometimes later in the years, I listened to the tape that we recorded during those room conversations, morning walks, etc. And there was one sentence in there, which either I had forgotten it, or I hadn't heard it, but I could also not remember that anyone ever talked about it before. Out of a sudden I hear this sentence, now you have become so successful in Germany, very soon the government is going to come down on you. He made a prediction. 5 months later, this prediction came true.
Hansadutta and I were anticipating Prabhupada's coming to Germany. We wanted him to come to Germany more than we wanted anything else, because it would give the devotees inspiration. And I wanted to share Prabhupada with them because most of them had not met Prabhupada, and we had a lot of devotees there who only knew Krishna because of us and the books. In the beginning, of course, it seemed like nobody knew how to do anything. Nobody knew how to take care of the deities or cook or clean or set things up. Everything had to be taught. It was wonderful how they wanted to learn. And we had a way with them that Prabhupada had actually taught us. I don't think that it was something natural. I think that Prabhupada had empowered us. We were artists and we were loners before we joined the movement. And now here we were surrounded by people day and night, and more people wanting to join us, and we always found a place for them. And so I was always very, very busy.
I was translating Prabhupada's books together with Sachinandan, and Nikhilananda was there also. Hansadutta, he was showing Prabhupada around in the Schloss, and then suddenly, of course, Prabhupada came in. He showed also the translator's room, and I had been working on teachings of Lord Chaitanya. So Prabhupada came in and he asked, what we were working on, and I showed him this book is practically published. We have the galley proofs from the printer. So then suddenly he said, read. I started to read the introduction of teachings of Lord Chaitanya for quite some time, 3-4 paragraphs. And Prabhupada was just standing there smiling, big smile, and listening. Although obviously he couldn't understand German, but just for him to see that the a book is in another language is coming out was his great, great pleasure.
I had put my alarm clock exactly on 7.5 minutes. All of a sudden, as I was lying behind my desk, I heard the voice of Srila Prabhupada inquiring about the German translations. First I thought it was a dream, a nightmare. Then, as I emerged to an ordinary wakeful consciousness, I actually became aware Prabhupada is standing in our room. A few days before, he had said that he was never like the servants in the Dalhousie Park who pretend to be busy but in reality sleep. And now I was sleeping under the table. I was really sleeping only for 7.5 minutes, and it was necessary to concentrate after the heavy breakfast. But my spiritual master, who only comes once in a lifetime in my area of service, now will find out I'm sleeping. I felt so bad, but I calculated it will be even more bad when Prabhupada finds me lying under the table. So I better emerge. So I somehow, as gracefully as I possibly could, brought my body in the sitting position. And at that moment, Prabhupada looked at me He a little surprised because I came out like a soldier, comes out under camouflage, and then he laughed into my face with the eyes sparkling with energy and joy. And he seemed to communicate, it's all right, we all need sometimes a rest. And I was very much pleased by that very human feature of Srila Prabhupada's smile.
So I was mainly concerned with Prabhupada's well-being. When he came, I knew him to be, a little bit fatty, and here he was quite thin, so I thought that my cooking would be so good that he would eat. I remember the first day, he ate everything. He cleaned his plate. There was absolutely nothing left. There were always devotees outside the door waiting for his remnants, and there was nothing left. And then he slept. He usually napped in the afternoon after he ate, but he slept. He must have slept until 6 o'clock that evening after he ate. And I was so worried. When he woke up, I asked him, nobody bothered to wake you because you were so soundly sleeping, and was there something wrong with my cooking? He said, oh, no, it was very good. I haven't enjoyed that much for a long time. So I was very happy. Another time I remember I brought him food, and I gave him very good portions. And when I came back to get his plate, he had barely touched anything. And I said, Prabhupada, what's wrong? Did I not prepare it properly? He seemed to be deep in thought. And he said, oh, Himavati, I've tasted everything there is to taste. He taught us how to eat. He cooked for us. I wanted to be close to Prabhupada. And so I was very obedient, and I did everything that he told me to do. In person, in his letters, I took his direction.
Once we were taking a walk, so because I always had a frustrated and irritable kind of mood on account of so many obstacles being put up by German authorities, I said to Prabhupada, I said, Prabhupada, sometimes I think I would rather, be engaged like a Kshatriya in killing people than preaching. And Prabhupada stopped and looked at me. He said, never do anything in anger, and don't touch politics. So anyway, so sometimes Prabhupada, would refer to the history that Parsurami drove out the Kshatriyas and that they settled in this part of the world, especially Germany. He remarked that the Germans are the most intelligent people on the planet, and that their Sanskrit scholars actually are better than Indian Sanskrit scholars. And he pointed out that the philology of German is identical or almost the same as Sanskrit. One thing he used to say, even after he visited Germany, whenever he would see Himavati or myself, he would say, what is that? Trinken and rauchen. What is that? I would say, probably, drinking and smoking. Yes, I saw everywhere, trinken and rauchen. He noticed that early in the morning they had beer vending machines and that people were drinking beer in the morning. One day he said, yes, I saw in Germany the man urinating on the street. He said, how degrading. What is this civilization? The man is urinating on the street. So some devotee commented, but Prabhupada in India, they pass urine and stool in the street. And he said, that's different.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna.
So this is Srila Prabhupada's visit to Melbourne in 1974, when he came out specifically for the Rath Yatra festival. And I had an arrangement with the immigration department that we could bring Srila Prabhupada through as a VIP, so he wouldn't have to go through the normal immigration procedures. So that was all right, but I had to actually stay with his luggage so that they could check the luggage out. So Srila Prabhupada went through, met with the devotees, and they kept Satsarup Maharaj and myself behind, and we had to stay there with the luggage while it was being checked. And by the time we came out, the devotees, they'd actually, and Prabhupada had all left, and Satsarup Maharaj and myself, we were stuck at the airport with the luggage, and all the devotees had gone. But there was one devotee who had not left, and fortunately we caught his attention, and we put all of Prabhupada's luggage in his van, and Satsarup Maharaj and myself, we had to actually sit on the luggage in the back of the van to go to Melbourne Temple. So at the airport, Srila Prabhupada had a television interview. 2 or 3 television channels came and some newspaper reporters came. Actually, most of his visits to Australia, we got a lot of press coverage, and that's why Srila Prabhupada liked coming. We had very good newspaper articles, a big feature article on the second page of the Melbourne Age, and quite a few other articles, and good television coverage. So at this television coverage, there were 2 or 3 television stations there, because there's only 4 stations in Australia anyway. And that evening, we told Srila Prabhupada we were expecting it to be on the news. So Ugrashrava, he brought in a television set into Srila Prabhupada's room, and we were watching and watching the news. And each time the feature had come on the news and it wasn't Prabhupada, he'd look away, right, and let that feature go. And then the next feature, he'd look to see if it was him, and unfortunately it wasn't on, right? Nothing appeared. But actually that evening, on the 10 o'clock news, there was a good feature on Prabhupada on Channel O. So Ugrashrava, he caught that, and we told Prabhupada the next day, and he was very pleased.
Prabhupada was very frank and strong with reporters. I think he enjoyed the exchange, because sometimes reporters, they like to try to find some fault, and Prabhupada would really be very strong with them. But the keynote that they picked up on, unfortunately, was not Prabhupada's talk. The devotees had hired a Rolls Royce, and as Prabhupada got into the Rolls Royce outside, then a parking warden came up and stuck a parking ticket on the window, just, to make a statement. So the headlines in the newspaper, of course, had little to do with what Prabhupada had said in the news conference. And they were all mainly about how either the devotees had lavished this Rolls Royce on someone who's supposed to be an ascetic sadhu, or the fact that, we got this, what they call a bluey in Australia, or a parking ticket.
A reporter from the newspaper Melbourne Age had come to visit Prabhupada, and Prabhupada took a lot of care with this fellow. He really explained everything in detail, and a lot of the question and answers had to do with reincarnation. Prabhupada explained how you could become less than human in your next life. He explained it in great detail. Took a lot of time with this man. And I was eager to go out the next morning and get the newspaper, see what illuminating article would have been printed. And I was very crestfallen when I opened them, saw the title, "Swami says he'll be animal in his next life." And I was just shattered. I thought, Prabhupada spent so much time with this guy. It was with frustration and anger, that I brought the paper to Prabhupada, and I thought I should preface my giving it to him with something, to prepare him. And I said, Prabhupada, he didn't understand, or chose not to understand anything you told him. He just twisted your words. And he said, what is the title? And I said, Swami says he'll be animal in next life. Does he mention Krishna? I said, yeah. Is Krishna's name in the article? I said, yeah. He said, count. And so I counted maybe 7 times Krishna's name
And he said, what is the circulation of that paper? I said, I don't know, a couple, 200,000-300,000. What is 200,000 or 300,000 times 7? He said, my spiritual master said, anytime people say Krishna's name, it is always a success. So he said, this article is a great success.
I remember when Prabhupada arrived, then we'd hired a Rolls Royce, and that was a cause of a lot of publicity. Actually, it made the evening newspaper. The headline was, His Divine Grace comes rolling in. I remember we put up all these posters. The poster read, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, at whose feet all masters sit. And then it had a nice picture of Prabhupada. And then the program for the 5 days or so that he was going to be in Melbourne. And then there was an overpass on the freeway from the airport, and someone had plastered all posters right across the walkover. So they were clearly visible about 20 feet up from the roadway. And we were all following Prabhupada's Rolls Royce. I remember the Rolls Royce slowed down for Prabhupada to see. We had the side doors of the vans open, and we had kirtan following Prabhupada all the way through the city and then to the temple. This is probably the small temple in Burnett Street in St Kilda. Actually, it was a terraced house, and the temple room was very, very small. Actually, Lord Jagannath, Subhadra and Balaram were on an altar above, directly above Radha Vallabha's head. Unfortunately, there were so many devotees that not everybody could fit into the room. He actually gave initiation here, fire sacrifice. I remember the smoke was pouring out of a room, and we were in the corridor. You couldn't even see the Vyasa from the doorway. Nevertheless, Prabhupada seemed very unfazed by the smoke.
So everyone was gearing up for Prabhupada to come, installing the deities. My brother was coming every day after work to build the altar. And of course all the devotees were like, Prabhupada said this, Prabhupada said that, Prabhupada says, Prabhupada. And I kept on thinking, when I meet him, what if I'm disappointed and say, what's the big deal? I was hoping I wouldn't be disappointed, but I reserved the right to make my own opinion. And as usual, Prabhupada arrived when all the devotees had gone to the airport. We'd just finished cleaning, and I was in the Brahmachari room. And I remember hearing, Prabhupada's here, Prabhupada's here. And as I rushed out of the room at the top of the stairs to go down, just at that same instant, Prabhupada was at the door to come in. And I always get very choked up when I recall this, because it was such a momentous moment. As soon as I saw Prabhupada, I knew without a doubt that Prabhupada was everything everyone said about Prabhupada. Anyway, so it was fabulous. Prabhupada to me looked effulgent, and his glow, he was glowing. And just to look at the physical form of Prabhupada, I had no doubt whatsoever that Prabhupada was a pure devotee.
The lecture in the Melbourne Town Hall, right opposite where our current Gopal's restaurant is today, There's a lower Melbourne Town Hall and there's an upper Melbourne Town Hall. The upper one is a gigantic cavernous hall, concert hall, with the organ. So we chose the lower Town Hall so it wouldn't look out of place if we only got a few hundred people, because the large one holds thousands of people. And we got quite a few hundred people along to attend Prabhupada's 1974 Town Hall lecture, and it was quite a wonderful event. We see Srila Prabhupada wearing that gorgeous saffron silk outfit that he's wearing there on that incredible saffron Vyasasan that was built by Shamananda Das. It was made of saffron silk, and it was quite astonishing. It all came to pieces and we were able to carry it to various venues. Some places we even had extra pieces attached that were on a motor and would spin around with little lights on them that would attract the spotlights. But that turned out to be rather of an over-endeavour.
This movement, Krishna consciousness movement, is teaching the science of God. And if you accept the name of the God, Krishna, this is also affirmed in other system also, then you will be able to associate with God immediately.
Srila Prabhupada stayed in our house in Brighton when our temple was in St Kilda. So at that time the quarters for Srila Prabhupada at the St Kilda temple weren't so nice, so my husband and my family, we moved out of the house. Srila Prabhupada moved in, and prior to him moving in, the devotees adjusted the house. They covered all the wall-to-wall carpet with white sheeting, and I would be at the house and Srila Prabhupada would be walking down the hallway and smiling, and his gentleness in his eyes. And at times he thanked me for him staying in the house. I only asked him if he wanted something to eat or what he would like, and he was always so polite, and he would say yes thank you or no thank you or do not trouble yourself. Or actually one time Prabhupada said, is there any service that you need? And with that, I didn't know what to say to Srila Prabhupada when he asked me that, so I said, no, Srila Prabhupada, just being here in your presence is all the service that I need. I didn't ask any spiritual questions of Srila Prabhupada. I was always felt sort of speechless in his presence, really. So I think I was a little bit too shy to ask him anything.
Here in this material world, the name and the substance different. Just like if I am thirsty, I want water. So the water must come to me. If I simply chant water, 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 that will not be effective, because it is relative word. But in the transcendental world, Krishna is the name of God, and it is God also. So, by chanting Hare Krishna, you are directly in contact with God. This is the meaning of Hare Krishna.
Originally my family lived in Melbourne, so I rang up my father and told him that my spiritual master is coming to Melbourne and on such and such a day, and it'd be really good if you could come and see him. And he did. And he came that day and saw Prabhupada, and he came along there and merged with the crowd and, listened to Prabhupada. And although he's a fairly serious Christian himself, he was very pleased to come along, and he had nothing but words of praise for Prabhupada. And he'd always supported me becoming a devotee, having, years early dropped out of university and become a hippie and hitchhiking around the country, and every time I'd come home I'd be onto some different kind of trip, and I'd, rave to him about it. But when I actually committed myself to fully participate and join the Hare Krishna movement, he was very happy and supportive of that, And I found out some years after I'd been a devotee that he was involved in some inter-Pacific conference about religious toleration, because I found a printout of the conference when I was a devotee in the temple. I didn't even know about it when it was happening, but he got up in front of everyone and said, my son has joined the Hare Krishna movement, isn't my beliefs, but still I fully support him to be involved in it, and I think it's a good thing. And my father was a school teacher. He was teaching in a grammar school, I think it was a Church of England school, but still, after the new temple was opened in Melbourne in Middle Park, with beautiful Radha Balba and Gaunitai and Jagannath deities, he organised an excursion from the school every year to come visit the temple, have darshan of the deities and have prasadam. And he did that for many, many years.
This is not enjoyment. You have got a car, but you are running at 70 miles speed, going to your business, and there you are earning hundreds and thousands of dollars. So you are thinking that you are enjoying, but this labor is suffering, you forget. And in order to forget this suffering, then I take to wine, take to this, take to that, to forget this suffering. So actually we are suffering,